Long before the cameras started rolling, the dream of dungeon stardom began with two kids staring at a screen. That dream is now a global reality, with massive crowds cheering for the heroes broadcast on the city's biggest displays. A new trio of adventurers has captured the public's heart, transitioning from internet fame to mainstream celebrity status. Our protagonist remembers watching them with stars in his eyes, recording their journey from the very beginning. But reality hit hard when he realized he lacked the strength to fight, forcing him to support from the sidelines as a manager. Now he documents their victories, praising the team's ace for another flawless performance in the dungeon. He keeps the camera rolling, congratulating her on clearing out the goblin horde without a single scratch. The excitement gets the better of her, and she launches herself at him for a celebratory embrace. He tries to maintain professional boundaries while being crushed by her overwhelming enthusiasm. The celebration turns into a clumsy tumble, proving that gravity is the only enemy she can't seem to defeat. But back at the office, the mood shifts instantly as his superior explodes over a rejected business opportunity. The boss grabs him by the collar, demanding to know why he turned down a major television appearance for the team. The girls are ready for the spotlight, unaware that their manager is taking heat to protect their image. He stands his ground, gritting his teeth against the pressure to sell them out for quick fame. The superior screams in his face, unable to comprehend why anyone would refuse such a lucrative offer. Sweat runs down his face as he prepares to drop the ugly truth behind the glitzy invitation. He shouts back that the producers demanded unethical favors from the girls in exchange for the airtime. The boss stares him down, his expression twisting not with shock but with irritation at the excuse. Meanwhile, the team waits innocently in the hallway, completely oblivious to the dark politics being discussed. The superior roars that such compromises are standard practice in the industry and must be accepted. Our boy refuses to back down, reminding him that these are just high school students under his protection. He knows that those with real power don't need to degrade themselves, but his team isn't there yet. The boss mocks his morality, insisting that since they lack influence, they must use every asset they have. He brushes off the manager's shoulder, warning him that he is throwing away a once-in-a-lifetime chance. The older man wipes his face, clearly exhausted by this sudden and inconvenient outbreak of morality. He leans in with a menacing glare, questioning if the manager actually wants the girls to succeed at all. The manager's fist clenches at his side, his knuckles turning white from the effort to hold back a punch. He screams that success isn't worth it if it means sacrificing their dignity to these predators. His outburst leaves him breathless, the silence of the room suddenly deafening after the shouting match. The boss stares him down with cold eyes, the tension in the room reaching its absolute breaking point. The boss's eyes narrow, signaling that the time for polite conversation is officially over. He mutters a quiet acknowledgement, the kind of calm that usually precedes a hurricane. Without another word, he turns his back on the manager and heads for the door, ending the debate. Our boy is left confused, wondering why the explosion he expected didn't happen right then and there. The truth is, this team is already famous enough to attract major media attention without shady deals. Their parents have deep roots in the industry, providing a safety net that should have protected them. But this snake of a boss knows exactly how to manipulate public perception and bypass those protections. He smiles with the arrogance of a man who knows he holds all the winning cards in this deck. He casually mentions that the agency's director hasn't been around to supervise things lately, removing the last obstacle. The manager chases after him, demanding to know what game he's actually playing with their careers. The hammer finally drops as the boss coldly informs our boy that his services are no longer required. The girls freeze in place, the color draining from their faces as they hear the verdict. They stand in stunned silence, unable to process that their guardian is being tossed aside like trash. The reality of the situation sinks in, leaving them vulnerable to the wolves circling the office. Our protagonist lowers his head, accepting the defeat he knew was a possibility when he spoke up. He always knew this company was rotten to the core, a place where morals go to die. Yet he stayed and fought, pouring his blood and sweat into protecting their dreams from people like this. He recalls every moment of their journey, from the training grounds to their first dungeon clear, all for nothing. The boss twists the knife, announcing that he will personally take over the team's management from now on. His intentions are transparent, viewing the girls not as talent but as personal playthings for his own amusement. A look of pure horror crosses our boy's face as he realizes exactly what management means to this predator. Desperate, he turns to the girls, asking if they are really okay with being treated like objects. But instead of fear or outrage, the trio stands there with an unreadable expression that chills him. He tries to warn them one last time that trading their dignity for fame is a deal with the devil. One of them looks up, her eyes devoid of the innocence he thought he was fighting to protect. They glance at each other, seemingly unbothered by the dark fate the manager just described to them. She opens her mouth to speak, shattering the image of the helpless victim he had built in his head. With a cheerful smile, she dismisses his concerns as if he's worrying about something trivial. Our boy is left speechless, his entire crusade for their honor crumbling in an instant. She admits that if selling out gets them to the top, she's more than willing to pay the price. The girls rationalize their choice, believing that selling out is just a shortcut to the big leagues. They brush off his desperate pleas, telling him to stop being such a buzzkill about their opportunity. He screams that their reputation as genuine adventurers is the only thing that matters in the long run. But his words fall on deaf ears, dismissed as the ramblings of a man who worries too much. The leader coldly reminds him that since he's fired, his opinion is now officially worthless. They immediately fawn over the new manager, who promises them an easier life with fewer rules. It's a sickening display of loyalty shifting, as they praise the predator for being cool and understanding. Our protagonist can only grit his teeth, the sting of betrayal hurting more than any physical wound. He thinks back to when he was 20, forming this team called the Riders from scratch. For 3 years, they climbed the ladder together, building a solid foundation of trust and skill. He clenches his fist, realizing that all that hard work is being stolen right out from under him. He exhales sharply, forced to admit that his philosophy of hard work just doesn't match their greed. He remembers lecturing them on punctuality and honor, lessons that clearly never truly sank in. If they are determined to walk a path of corruption, he realizes he no longer has the power to stop them. The girls wave him off like a pest, eager to start their new compromised lives without his oversight. He steps up to the new handler, the tension between the protector and the predator palpable. The snake in the suit places a condescending hand on his shoulder, claiming his prize. With a smug grin, he whispers for the former manager to pack his trash and leave the building. The bald superior laughs in the background, mocking him for leaving without a fight. Our boy turns his back on the people he dedicated his life to, his shadow heavy with defeat. He offers a final silent bow, maintaining his professionalism even as his world crumbles. He walks toward the exit, leaving the team to their fate until a sudden movement stops him. The quietest member of the trio stands frozen, her conscience finally kicking into gear. She clutches her chest, struggling with the weight of the decision she is about to make. She takes a deep breath and speaks up, her voice cutting through the self-congratulatory atmosphere. She announces that if their guardian is leaving, then she is quitting the team right along with him. Our protagonist freezes in the doorway, stunned that someone actually remembered his lessons. He stares in disbelief, having assumed that the rot had spread to the entire group. She looks back with determined eyes, proving that she values her dignity more than a quick paycheck. She crosses her arms in defiance, leaving the management in shock as the team's unity instantly shatters. The traitorous teammate remains unfazed, her ego already inflated by the promise of easy fame and corporate backing. But the third member stands apart, her expression hardening as she processes the betrayal happening before her eyes. Our protagonist watches in stunned silence, having expected to walk out of those doors completely alone. She lowers her gaze, gathering the courage to defy the very people who hold her future in their hands. The sleazy replacement tries to laugh off Kaya's hesitation, assuming she's just confused about the new arrangement. But she violently swats his hand away, rejecting his touch like it's a physical disease. With her head held high, she marches past the stunned predator, making her allegiance crystal clear. The suit watches in disbelief as his asset walks away from the deal of a lifetime to chase after a fired man. She extends a hand not to the man with the money, but to the man with the morals. She declares that she chooses her original manager, leaving the corporate stooge sputtering in the background. When the suit reminds her that our boy is fired, she simply asks what title she should use for him instead. She loops her arm through his, locking him into place with a grip that says she isn't letting go. A playful tease escapes her lips as she suggests, "Darling might be a suitable replacement for manager." Her grip tightens physically, grounding our flustered protagonist in this sudden turn of events. She beams with pure joy, while our boy turns a shade of red that could rival a dungeon warning light. The rejected handler explodes, unable to comprehend why anyone would choose a loser over a winner. He screams that without the agency's backing, her career as a dungeon streamer is effectively over. Kaya calmly counters that she doesn't need their dirty influence to succeed, just her own 2 hands. The snake adjusts his glasses, sneering that without him, she'll be stuck doing small-time gigs forever. She roars back that staying small is better than paying for success with her body and soul. The room falls silent as she lays out the hard truth, leaving her former teammates to wallow in their shame. The other girls look away, the sting of her words piercing through their justifications for selling out. She shouts that a debut means nothing if they aren't actually ready to survive the dangers of the dungeon. Standing tall, she lectures the room on the fact that longevity in this industry requires actual skill, not just hype. She affirms that building a genuine fanbase takes time, a concept these corporate vultures clearly forgot. With a final declaration of loyalty, she vows to follow her manager's path, no matter how hard it gets. The ball director watches from the shadows, his face twisting into a mask of pure malice. He grins with a threat, warning her that stepping out that door means entering a world of pain. Our protagonist glances back, fully aware that they just made a very powerful enemy. The boss delivers his final curse, promising to blacklist her from every other agency in the city. The boss doubles down on his threat, explaining exactly how deep his influence runs in this city. He paints a grim picture of her future, where every door in the industry is slammed shut by his blacklist. A twisted smile forms on his face as he tells her she'll never work as a dungeon streamer again. The two villains stand side by side, mocking the pair for thinking they can survive without corporate protection. Our protagonist listens to the venom, his expression hardening as the fear is replaced by anger. He remembers why he started this job, thinking of the children who look up to these heroes. It was supposed to be a world of sparkling dreams and adventure, not backroom deals and exploitation. His eyes sharpen into a glare, the resolve to fight back finally cementing in his mind. He takes a firm step forward, physically placing himself between the predator and his charge. He shields Kaya with his own body, demanding that they keep their adult corruption away from her. The boss looks up in shock, stunned that a fired employee would dare to step on his toes, literally or figuratively. Our boy declares that true dungeon streaming isn't about favors or connections, but about the adventure itself. He clenches his fist at his side, channeling all his frustration into a single vow of defiance. He roars that he will protect her, no matter how many bridges he has to burn to do it. Pointing a finger directly at the establishment, he swears to make her a top-tier star on his own terms. He glances back at her, his face flushed with the adrenaline of declaring war on a giant. The villains stand in stunned silence, too baffled by his audacity to immediately respond. Kaya watches him with glowing cheeks, her heart clearly skipping a beat at his fierce defense. He grabs her hand tight, sealing their new partnership with a physical bond that rejects the company. Without waiting for a rebuttal, he drags her away, leading the way out of the toxic environment. The bald director finally snaps, his face turning purple with impotent rage as he realizes he's being ignored. He screams threats at their retreating backs, warning them that they'll be begging to return within a week. The remaining traders watch in silence, perhaps realizing they just bet on the wrong horse. The door slams shut with a heavy thud, cutting off the shouting and marking the start of their independence. Silence returns to the hallway as the duo walks toward their desks to collect their personal belongings. Our boy breaks the quiet, asking if she's truly sure about throwing her lot in with a fired manager. She looks at him with genuine confusion, as if the answer wasn't already obvious to everyone but him. He lets out a long sigh, the adrenaline fading to reveal the massive mountain they now have to climb. He puts on a brave face, suggesting they grab their gear and get out before security arrives. But she stops him in his tracks, shifting her stance to block his path for a moment. Leaving the toxic agency behind, the pair steps out into the world with nothing but each other. She clings to his hand, making it clear that she's not just following a manager, but a partner. Her smile radiates pure relief, happy to be free from the corporate chains that nearly bound her forever. Our boy can't help but blush, realizing the massive weight of the trust she has placed entirely in his hands. He clenches his fist, silently swearing that he won't let this gamble be a mistake for her. The city looms large and intimidating before them, but his resolve to succeed is stronger than ever. They walk forward with renewed energy, ready to take on the world from square one together. Their destination is his humble apartment, a far cry from the glitzy dorms provided by the agency. He unlocks the door, the sound marking the end of the longest, most stressful day of his life. He steps into the darkness of his home, the exhaustion finally catching up to his adrenaline. All he wants is a hot shower and a long sleep to reset his brain for the battles ahead. But as he walks down the hallway, his senses scream that something is terribly wrong. A sudden pressure fills the air, freezing him in his tracks before he can even take off his shoes. He spins around, his eyes scanning the room for the source of this impossible energy. Reality fractures right in his living room as a dungeon gate tears open a hole in space. To understand how we got here, we need to rewind the clock a few hours to their commute home. It was only late afternoon, a time when he would usually be buried under mountains of paperwork. He checks his phone, marveling at the strange sensation of leaving work while the sun is still up. The train is filled with the walking dead of the corporate world, a fate he just narrowly escaped. But he isn't alone in his freedom, as Kaya leans in to bridge the gap between them. She looks up with innocent curiosity, asking the million-dollar question of what their next move is. He admits he hasn't figured it out yet, the reality of unemployment starting to set in. She tilts her head, pointing out that calling him manager doesn't make much sense anymore. He dryly notes that his current job title is technically unemployed, which doesn't have quite the same ring to it. She teases him with that label, enjoying the way he squirms under the brutal truth. She leans in closer, offering a compromise that suggests she has a very different dynamic in mind. With a mischievous sparkle in her eyes, she suggests darling might be a more appropriate title. She feigns shyness, claiming she struggled to choose between that and other affectionate terms. Our protagonist tries to maintain his composure, but the girl is relentless in her flirting. She demands a preference, forcing him to beg for his old professional title back just to stop the teasing. He tries to correct her terminology, but she seems dead set on the new affectionate nickname. Her gaze is so intense and genuine that he finds himself unable to maintain eye contact. She recalls her time with the other girls, realizing she was always laughing alone in a crowd of fakes. Looking at her now, he notices a lightness in her expression that the corporate dorms never provided. She beams with a radiant smile, confessing that she's just happy to be by his side. Her joy is contagious, forcing a small, resigned smile onto his own face. It makes sense, considering they were the original duo who built the team from the ground up. The train rattles onward, carrying the two renegades away from the city center and toward a fresh start. He exhales deeply, trying to re-establish professional boundaries by insisting on the title of manager. He shifts the topic to business, pointing out that solo dungeon diving is a logistical nightmare. Kaya listens intently, her expression shifting from playful to serious as the reality sets in. But she immediately misinterprets his safety concerns as a deep, romantic confession of worry. She melts into the seat, her mind clearly wandering into a fantasy genre rather than an action one. He frantically reminds her that the audience is there for dungeon clears, not a soap opera. She puffs her cheeks in frustration, clearly annoyed that he's prioritizing the audience over the mood. She turns away with a pout, muttering that she doesn't care about herself, only him. He tries to smooth things over, explaining that her safety is actually the cornerstone of their business plan. The validation hits her like a spell, turning her face into a steaming tomato of affection. An awkward but sweet silence descends on the car as they sit side by side. But inside his head, the manager is already calculating the massive mountain of problems they face. Without a team to support her, she will be facing the dungeon's horrors completely alone. While becoming a streamer is easy in theory, standing out in a saturated market is a different beast. He realizes he will have to act as the cameraman, filming the action with nothing but a smartphone. This means he'll be right in the splash zone of goblin blood, risking his life for the perfect angle. To succeed as a Maycuber, they need high-quality footage of dangerous dungeon clears. He rubs his chin, analyzing the metrics required to monetize their new venture. The harsh reality is that without a subscriber base, they are essentially shouting into the void. He looks at the disparity between her combat potential and his own status as a powerless civilian. They will have to grind through low-level dungeons just to build a portfolio that anyone cares about. The sheer weight of the logistics is enough to make him sigh, realizing just how crazy this gamble is. Before he can even formulate a plan, she drops a surprise on him with a confident smirk. He checks his phone, expecting a text, but finding something much more impressive instead. She has already set up their official streaming channel, complete with branding and a verified profile. He stares in shock, realizing that while he was worrying about logistics, she was already executing them. She hums with satisfaction, clearly pleased with her lightning-fast administrative skills. She pumps her fists, declaring that she refuses to be the dead weight in this partnership. A genuine smile crosses his face as he realizes he might have underestimated her drive. On the train ride home, her excitement bubbles over, fueled by the thrill of their new independence. He mirrors her energy, his fist clenching with the resolve to make this crazy dream a reality. They share a quiet moment of connection, two rebels against the world finding comfort in their shared path. But as the train rattles on, the conversation shifts to the immediate future and where they will set up base. She casually asks if she can come over to his place tomorrow, her cheeks dusting with pink. He agrees without thinking, assuming she means for a strategy meeting or equipment check. But her expression shifts into something far more predatory, suggesting her agenda involves less work and more romance. She pins him against the train window, invading his personal space with zero regard for public decency. Her voice drops to a whisper, teasing him with implications that make his heart hammer against his ribs. She presses a finger to her lips, enjoying the way she can effortlessly fluster her former superior. But the bravado instantly collapses as she realizes how bold she's being, and she retreats into a blushing mess. Our boy lets out a nervous laugh, relieved that the sudden romantic assault has been called off. She recovers quickly, flashing a smile that is equal parts innocent and dangerous. The city passes by in a blur, the towering buildings reminding them of the corporate giants they are up against. At the station, she waves goodbye, her mood soaring high above the gloomy streets. They part ways for the night, the distance between them feeling temporary rather than final. He watches her go, waving back until she disappears into the evening crowd. Left alone, the weight of reality settles back onto his shoulders with every step he takes. He merges into the flow of commuters, just another face in the crowd harboring a secret ambition. His mind races with strategies, calculating how to bypass the agency's blacklist and get her noticed. He arrives at his apartment complex, a modest building that will serve as their new headquarters. Walking down the quiet corridor, he mentally prepares a list of tasks for the morning. He slides the key into the lock, unaware that his peaceful evening is about to be interrupted. He steps through the front door, expecting the quiet comfort of his empty apartment. Instead, he finds a swirling vortex of doom decorating his hallway like a piece of modern art. His jaw hits the floor as he tries to process the impossible sight standing in his living room. And just like that, the timeline catches up to the present crisis. His manager brain kicks in instantly, identifying the anomaly as a dungeon gate. He mentally runs through the safety protocols he usually preaches to his team, assessing the threat. The lack of lightning discharge suggests the gate is stable, which is a small mercy. He breathes a sigh of relief, realizing it's an entry-type gate, meaning monsters won't be spilling out. But without his professional scanning equipment, the actual difficulty level is a terrifying mystery. Curiosity wars with caution as he steps closer to inspect the phenomenon. The Void decides to end the debate by lashing out like a hungry beast. A massive force yanks him off his feet, dragging him helplessly into the abyss. He screams in protest, but physics has clearly left the building. His desperate reach for the doorframe fails as he tumbles headfirst into the dark. The trip ends abruptly with a painful introduction to a hard stone floor. He sits up, checking his limbs to ensure he's still in one piece after the rough landing. But the pain fades instantly as he looks up and takes in his new surroundings. He finds himself sitting in the middle of a glittering, massive crystal cavern. The jagged formations glow with an ethereal light that feels completely alien. For a moment, he's struck by the sheer beauty of the deadly landscape. He slaps himself awake, remembering that tourism is usually a fatal hobby in places like this. He turns back to the portal, knowing he needs to leave before the local wildlife arrives. He sprints toward the swirling exit, desperate to return to the safety of his boring apartment. But a holographic barrier slams into place, blocking his path with a digital hum. A loading bar appears in thin air, the ultimate enemy of anyone in a rush. A system message flashes, announcing a special grant of abilities as a favor. Our boy stares in confusion, wondering who exactly is giving him favors in a dungeon. The loading bar completes its cycle, finalizing the mysterious digital transaction. A status screen manifests, revealing that his stats are impressively terrible across the board. He pauses, a sudden realization hitting him as he recalls the true power of adventurers. The system clarifies that he hasn't been gifted with offensive powers like fire magic. Instead, the holographic interface designates his new role as a merchant with zero equipment. He stares in confusion as status screens and jobs are concepts that don't exist in this world. He glances around the crystal cavern, wondering if this glittering place is actually a dungeon. The gate hums ominously behind him, a stark reminder that this abyss is inside his home. Before he can investigate, the vortex ejects him, throwing him back into reality. He lands painfully on his wooden floor, the trip to the other side lasting only seconds. He backs away from the swirling black hole, realizing his apartment is now a hazard zone. He pulls out his phone, knowing he needs to report this anomaly to the proper authorities. The scene shifts to the exterior as the Dungeon Investigation Division arrives at his door. He opens up to find a polite young officer, not the heavy military response he expected. The agent holds his cap, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the magical emergency. He introduces himself with a smile, ready to inspect the unauthorized dungeon gate. Meanwhile, Kaya is enjoying her freedom, taking a shower without a care in the world. Her phone rests on the bed, holding the message that is about to ruin her mood. She hums happily in the steam, unaware that her manager is dealing with a spatial crisis. She washes away the stress of the day, reveling in the privacy of her new life. Sitting in the bath, she blushes as her thoughts drift to her partnership with the manager. She recalls his determined smile, her heart filtering the memory through a romantic lens. She giggles to herself, thrilled by the idea of working as an exclusive duo. She steps out of the tub, her spirits high and her skin glowing from the heat. As she puts on her clothes, she remains oblivious to the danger lurking at headquarters. A sudden buzz from her phone startles her, snapping her out of her daydream. She picks it up to find a message from the manager, expecting a strategy update. Instead, she screams in shock upon reading that a dungeon has spawned in his room. Back at the apartment, the investigation team prepares to analyze the phenomenon. The officer explains that they offer 24-hour support for these kinds of supernatural disasters. Our protagonist apologizes for the trouble, feeling guilty about the late-night call. The agent steps inside, assuring him that handling rogue gates is their specialty. He kneels before the void, opening his briefcase to begin the official assessment. The officer smiles apologetically, delivering news that clearly isn't what the manager wants to hear. He scans the gate, revealing that this particular dungeon runs incredibly deep underground. The high-tech scanner hums, analyzing the magical density to determine the threat level. The results come in fast, confirming that this isn't just a random spatial hiccup. It's a G-rank dungeon with 20 floors, a massive labyrinth for a residential apartment. Our boy realizes that living next to a monster spawner is a logistical nightmare. He nervously asks how long it would take for the government to clear it out. He needs this thing gone yesterday, but bureaucracy rarely moves at the speed of light. The officer explains the two paths: wait for the state or hire private mercenaries. Government intervention is free but slow, while private clearing comes with a hefty price tag. Since G-rank dungeons offer terrible loot, most professional adventurers won't even bother with them. With high-demand dungeons everywhere, his little basement problem could be ignored for months. The officer confirms his worst fears, estimating a wait time that stretches into next year. A year of living with a void in his hallway is simply not an option. Desperate, he asks about the private route, hoping his savings account can take the hit. The price tag is astronomical, a sum that would bankrupt him 3 times over. $2 million is the cost of freedom, a number that makes his wallet weep. His jaw drops, the reality of his financial ruin crashing down on him instantly. The officer politely asks if he should file the paperwork for the slow free option. He hands over the forms, effectively condemning the apartment to a year of haunting. Defeated, our boy signs his life away, accepting his new roommate from another dimension. The transaction is complete, leaving the manager with a piece of paper and a headache. The agent salutes, cheerfully advising him to call back if he gets eaten. He sees the officer out, the door closing on his last hope for a quick fix. Alone again, he pulls out his phone, knowing he has one person he must tell. He types out a message to Kaya, explaining that their headquarters is now a dungeon. But before he can hit send, the void behind him begins to roar. The mockery of his former boss echoes in his mind, fueling a sudden, crazy idea. His eyes land on a metal bat, the only weapon available in his civilian arsenal. He grips the handle tight, deciding to become the hero his own story needs. He imagines fighting by her side, wishing he had the strength to be more than just a cameraman. But then he realizes the room dungeon angle is a viral goldmine that could skyrocket their popularity. With renewed resolve, he grips his bat and steps into the swirling void for Kaya's sake. He arrives in a cavern of jagged crystals, a beautiful but deadly landscape hidden inside his hallway. He immediately takes cover behind a pillar, his knees shaking as he listens for monsters. Peeking out, he breathes a sigh of relief, finding the immediate area clear of threats. Safe for the moment, he recalls the strange system message designating his job as merchant. He opens the holographic interface, deciding to investigate what this non-combat class actually offers. The status screen confirms his role, a class that sounds more suited for a desk job than a dungeon. He reasons that since he can't fight, he might have access to support skills or logistics. He taps the house icon, hoping it leads to a shop where he can buy his way to survival. A digital store opens up, displaying icons for food, medicine, and mysterious mushrooms. Scrolling down, his eyes widen as he sees actual weapons listed for purchase. This is a game changer, bypassing the strict laws that require licenses for owning dungeon gear. He recalls the tedious lectures on weapon permits, realizing he just found a massive legal loophole. His finger hovers over another tab labeled Inventory, a staple feature in any RPG. It functions exactly like an item box, a legendary ability that allows for infinite storage. In the adventurer world, a porter with this skill is a highly paid VIP, not a servant. But he snaps out of the fantasy, remembering that his true mission is Kaya's success. He refuses to become a background character for some random party just to spite his old boss. His pride demands that he succeed on his own terms, building an empire from this tiny room. Returning to the shop, he notices the currency is gold, not the yen he has in his bank account. The question remains of how to earn this currency without killing monsters he can't fight. He spots a sell button, wondering if the commerce flows both ways in this system. He taps it, and the interface immediately scans the items currently in his possession. A prompt asks if he wants to sell his equipment, startling him with its directness. He realizes the system can convert physical objects from the real world into digital gold. His cheap metal bat is valued at 10,000 gold, a surprisingly generous exchange rate. He does the mental math, realizing the system pays out roughly half of the item's retail value. Rushing back to his desk, he grabs a coin to test the limits of this interdimensional pawn shop. He discovers the exchange rate is a simple 1-to-1 ratio, meaning his yen has actual power here. Even a bag of stale chips registers as a single gold coin, turning his literal garbage into currency. A realization hits him like a truck as he understands the financial loophole sitting in his room. He frantically clears out his apartment, selling every piece of junk and emptying his savings to maximize his funds. The final tally is impressive, giving him a war chest of over 200,000 gold to play with. He looks at his empty drawers with a grin, thankful that his hoarding habit finally paid off. With his wallet full, he opens the weapon shop, ready to buy his way to power. The digital catalog offers a buffet of violence, from jagged daggers to heavy axes. He scrolls through the options, noting that most weapons in his budget offer similar stat boosts. His eyes stop on a classic design, the kind of weapon every hero starts their journey with. He drops 100,000 on a longsword, figuring it's the most balanced tool for a beginner. The item description promises a solid increase to both strength and speed, exactly what he needs. But checking his status screen, he's confused to see his stats haven't budged an inch. He stares at the numbers, wondering if he just got scammed by an interdimensional vending machine. Then he spots the empty equipment slots, realizing he has to manually equip the gear like in a game. He focuses his mind on the inventory, willing the digital item to manifest in the real world. A strange energy gathers in his palm as the system responds to his mental command. The sword appears in a flash of light, and his stats instantly triple to reflect the upgrade. He swings the blade with ease, marveling at how the magical buff makes his body feel weightless. Armed and dangerous, he steps deeper into the crystal cave to test his new toy. He admits his form is amateurish, but the system's assistance makes him feel capable of violence. He shifts into a batting stance, hoping his high school baseball experience translates to monster slaying. A sudden wave of doubt washes over him as he questions if he really has the guts to kill. But the dungeon doesn't care about his feelings, as a shadow moves behind the crystal pillars. His instincts scream a warning, signaling that his first customer has arrived. A goblin steps out, the classic starter enemy that looks a lot scarier in person. It grins with malicious intent, viewing the suit-wearing human as an easy meal. The monster screeches and charges, swinging a crude club with surprising speed. Our boy steals his nerves, knowing that hesitation here means a very messy death. He dodges the strike at the last second, the club smashing into the ground where he just stood. He analyzes the enemy's movements, realizing his slightly superior speed stat is the only thing keeping him alive. The system displays the goblin's stats, confirming that while it's strong, it's slower than he is. But numbers on a screen don't make the swinging club any less terrifying as it smashes into the ground. He ducks under a lethal swing, his body moving on pure instinct and adrenaline. The goblin roars in frustration, leaving itself wide open for a counterattack. He seizes the moment, his blade slicing through the monster's arm and turning it into black mist. The system explains that dungeon monsters don't leave corpses, just loot and a fading shadow. He stands his ground, the realization that he can actually fight sending a rush of euphoria through his veins. It's the scene he played out in his head 1,000 times as a kid, finally becoming reality. The goblin screeches one last time, refusing to go down without a final struggle. But our boy is done playing, delivering a clean, decisive slash across the monster's chest. The creature collapses and dissolves, proving that he has what it takes to survive in this world. He pumps his fist in victory, celebrating the first step of his journey from manager to hero. A sudden chime interrupts the moment, signaling that the universe has noticed his achievement. The words "level up" float before him, the sweetest notification he has ever received. A warm light envelops his body, washing away the fatigue and knitting his muscles with new power. He stands tall as a level 2 adventurer, complete with imaginary fanfares celebrating his growth. His status screen updates, showing a small but significant increase in every single attribute. A grin spreads across his face as he realizes he can grind his way to the top without anyone knowing. He opens the interface to distribute his new points, strategizing like a gamer min-maxing his character. He taps the screen, dumping points into his physical stats to ensure he survives the next encounter. The loot screen pops up, displaying the meager rewards of a goblin claw and a magic stone. But the appraisal value is a harsh reality check, offering a pathetic 10 gold for a life-or-death battle. He realizes that grinding goblins won't pay the bills, so he needs to invest in better gear immediately. He thinks back to his life as a salaryman, 4 years of sitting at a desk and hoarding his paycheck. At 23, he has nothing to show for his life except a complete lack of hobbies and expenses. He pulls out his bank book, staring at the 4 million yen he saved by having absolutely no social life. It's a sad testament to his loneliness, but right now that solitude is about to fund his revolution. He heads out into the night, marching toward the bank with the determination of a high roller. He drains his account of millions, betting his entire life savings on the gamble of a lifetime. The system processes his life savings, converting the cash into a staggering balance of 2.5 million gold. Keisuke holds up his phone with a wink, ready to indulge in the most expensive shopping spree of his life. With the confidence of a high roller, he taps the screen to begin his transformation from manager to warrior. He declares his intention to blow the entire budget on premium gear, knowing that money is his only superpower. He explains that the system uses a standard RPG equipment layout, with 4 slots waiting to be filled. Prioritizing speed and agility over bulky defense, he decides to fill his slots with high-stat accessories. He browses the shop and drops a fortune on 3 high-rank necklaces that boost his strength and speed. The transaction completes instantly, and the magical items materialize in the air around him. He focuses his mind to equip them, and the jewelry settles around his neck with a soft, magical hum. His status screen updates immediately, showing his physical stats skyrocketing to superhuman levels. A confident smile crosses his face as he realizes he finally has the numbers to back up his ambition. He steps back into the crystal cavern, the beautiful scenery now looking less like a death trap and more like a playground. He spots a goblin and lunges, his new speed allowing him to land a clean stab before it can even react. He drives the blade deeper, his enhanced strength overpowering the monster in a direct clash. The goblin screams in confusion, unable to comprehend how this human is suddenly dominating the fight. A montage of violence follows as he tears through the dungeon, his movements sharp and precise. He pauses for a moment, genuinely surprised by how easy the battle has become with his new stats. To his enhanced senses, the terrifying monsters now look like they're moving in slow motion. He casually leans back to dodge a club swing, the attack missing him by a mile. He strikes a pose over his enemy, realizing that in this world money truly is the ultimate power. Sweat drips down his face as he grins, intoxicated by the sheer thrill of pay-to-win gaming. He delivers a final horizontal slash, cutting through the goblin with 0 resistance. The monster dissolves into black mist, another victory bought and paid for by his bank account. He stands amidst the fading particles, feeling like a whale player who just maxed out his character on day 1. He collects the loot drops, a handful of crystals that represent a tiny return on his massive investment. With his confidence peaking, he decides to push his luck and see how deep this dungeon really goes. He pumps his fist, ready to grind until he earns back every single coin he just spent. He descends to the 2nd floor where the goblins are higher level and travel in dangerous packs. By the 3rd floor, the difficulty spikes again, introducing level 6 elites wielding actual weapons. He continues his descent toward the 4th floor, his sword ready for whatever horrors await him in the dark. Keisuke freezes mid-step, his enhanced senses picking up a sudden disturbance in the air. 2 goblins drop from the ceiling, screeching as they attempt a lethal pincer attack. He calmly notes that ganging up on a newbie is pretty bad manners. Their clubs smash into the stone, hitting nothing but the empty air he left behind. He leans back effortlessly, watching the crude weapon pass inches from his nose. With a fluid spin, his expensive blade slices through both attackers in a single stroke. The monsters shriek as they are cut down, their ambush failing spectacularly. Keisuke grins, realizing that handling multiple enemies is easier than managing a pop group. But the dungeon isn't done, and a sudden presence behind him triggers his alarms. A massive foot stomps down, shaking the ground and announcing a heavier threat. A trio emerges, led by a hulking goblin that clearly ate all the protein. Keisuke sighs, annoyed that the dungeon is throwing a chaotic mob at him already. The brute swings a massive log, forcing him to block the heavy impact. Surrounded, he reminds himself to stay cool and dismantle them one by one. The goblins rush him from all sides, trying to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. He weaves through the assault, his speed stat making him a blur to them. A club smashes the earth, kicking up dust as he dances out of danger. He parries a strike close to his face, his mind processing the battle calmly. He finds an opening and strikes, his blade cutting through the chaos with precision. His sword flashes in the dim light, a deadly arc that clears the crowd. He drives the point home, finishing off the last grunt with a lethal stab. He exhales a sharp breath, the adrenaline of the skirmish finally settling down. Standing amidst the dissolving bodies, he realizes he's actually getting good at this. He grips his hilt, reflecting on the simple loop of converting kills into gold. A smile breaks out as he admits that this real-life RPG is actually fun. He looks deeper into the cave, recalling the report about 20 floors. But he knows scanners can be wrong, and the abyss might be deeper. His eyes narrow, calculating that his current stats should carry him to the end. The real variable is the boss, a monster that will be exponentially stronger. He sweats nervously, deciding that rushing the boss might be a fatal mistake. The grinding session pays off immediately, boosting his level to 7 and his stats to superhuman heights. He checks the time, realizing he's been lost in the thrill of the hunt until late at night. Standing in the crystal expanse, he calculates that the trek back to his living room will take an hour. The swirling vortex awaits, the bridge between a world of monsters and a world of rent. He steps through the void, his foot landing heavily on the familiar wooden floorboards. Collapsing with exhaustion, he breathes in the stale air of his apartment, safe at last. He shudders, recalling the goblin ambush on the return trip, a reminder that the commute is deadly. Looking up at his ceiling, the apartment that once felt like home now feels suffocatingly small. After the vastness of the crystal caverns, his tiny room feels like a shoebox, albeit a safe one. The silence is broken by his phone, vibrating with a call he definitely missed earlier. He sees Kaya's name flashing on the screen and scrambles to answer before she worries. She pops up on video chat, frantic with worry after he went radio silent for hours. He sits on the floor, sheepishly explaining that he was just busy exploring the dungeon in his hallway. But as he looks closer at the screen, his eyes drift to a certain distraction. Her casual home attire leaves little to the imagination, a critical hit to his composure. Panic overrides logic, and he slams the end call button, shouting a frantic apology. Kaya is left staring at a black screen, wondering why her manager just hung up on her. Back in his room, Keisuke covers his face, cursing himself for acting like a hormonal teenager. A text pops up moments later, setting a meeting at his place for tomorrow to discuss strategy. She follows up with a tease calling him a pervert, leaving him sputtering at the accusation. She doubles down with a joke about victory underwear, ensuring he won't get a wink of sleep. The night fades into a peaceful morning, the birds singing for the first day of his unemployment. He wakes up naturally, the sunlight hitting his face without the dread of an alarm clock. Old habits die hard, and he realizes he's up at 4 a.m. ready for a job he no longer has. But instead of stress, he feels a wave of relief, smiling at the freedom of a clear schedule. His mind drifts to business, wondering what will happen to the Writers channel he built. He knows he should probably post an update about Kaya's departure to warn the fans. Deciding to be professional, he starts drafting messages to his industry contacts about his resignation. It's a tedious task, but burning bridges politely is a necessary evil in the corporate world. He hits send on the mass notification, officially cutting the last cord that tied him to his old life. The doorbell chimes, signaling the arrival of the first guest to the new headquarters. Keisuke shuffles down the hallway, still adjusting to the rhythm of a life without a corporate schedule. He cracks the door open, expecting a business partner, but finding something else entirely. Kaya stands on the threshold, beaming with an energy that brightens the gloomy apartment complex. She has traded her dungeon armor for casual wear and a bag full of groceries. She announces her intention to cook dinner, treating this like a domestic date rather than a strategy meeting. She breezes past him without waiting for an invitation, making herself right at home. She sheds her outer layers, clearly planning to stay for quite a while. She turns to him with a flushed face, the intimacy of the situation suddenly hitting her. Keisuke frantically waves his hands, trying to dispel the sudden romantic tension in the air. But she leans in with a mischievous grin, admitting that she might have some ulterior motives. He stares in confusion as the atmosphere shifts from domestic to something slightly more chaotic. She pops on a pair of bunny ears, playing off her boldness as just another joke between partners. But Keisuke isn't focused on her outfit. He's pointing at the swirling vortex of doom in his hallway. She finally notices the elephant in the room, or rather the interdimensional rift in the floorboards. He confirms that this is the little problem he mentioned in his frantic text messages. She admits she thought he was just embarrassed about a messy room or a secret stash of magazines. He sighs, offended that she thought he would invite her over to see that kind of collection. They stand side by side, staring into the abyss that has replaced his welcome mat. He admits he doesn't know the cause, but his manager brain is already seeing the potential. Kaya blinks in surprise, not seeing how a death trap in the hallway is a good thing. He explains that streaming from a private dungeon bypasses all the red tape of the guild system. She realizes the unique angle, acknowledging that live dungeon runs are usually a corporate monopoly. But a shadow of concern crosses her face as she considers the logistics. She asks the obvious question. If they stream, does that mean he has to follow her into the danger zone? He nods, acknowledging that under normal circumstances, he would be nothing but a liability. But he flashes a confident grin, telling her that the man she knew yesterday is gone. Kaya tilts her head, wondering if the stress of unemployment has finally cracked his mind. He reveals the secret, claiming that the dungeon granted him a power the moment he stepped inside. Her eyes light up with hope, realizing that her manager isn't just a spectator anymore. He beams with pride, explaining that he managed to clear the initial floors all by himself. Kaya grabs him by the shoulders, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and concern for his safety. Her expression softens into a flush of admiration, realizing her manager is much tougher than he looks. Overcome with emotion, she pulls him into a tight hug, grateful that he's still in one piece. He breaks the tension by offering to demonstrate the unique power he gained inside the dungeon. A holographic screen manifests in the air, displaying her physical attributes in perfect detail. He marvels at the numbers, confirming that she is indeed a natural-born prodigy with high base stats. But as he scans the data, a confused noise escapes his lips as he notices something odd. He realizes that unlike him, she doesn't have a specific job class listed on her profile. He calls out to her to explain, but she seems to have drifted off into her own little world. She turns away, her face burning red as she completely misinterprets his intense staring. She covers her chest, her imagination running wild with romantic delusions about his gaze. He frantically clarifies that he was analyzing her combat stats, not checking her out. She recovers her composure, though she looks a little disappointed by the unromantic correction. Getting back to business, he explains that this analysis ability is a massive strategic advantage. She clasps her hands together, thrilled that their life has effectively turned into a video game. He tries to explain the technicalities, but she's just happy to be part of the adventure. He decides to write the numbers down so she can visualize exactly where she stands. He scribbles the data onto a notepad, translating the digital magic into physical ink. He realizes the best way to explain her strength is to show a direct comparison with his own sheet. While he crunches the numbers, she returns to her domestic duties at the kitchen sink. She starts the rice cooker, the beep signaling that dinner is officially on the way. She announces the meal prep is done just as he finishes his statistical calculations. He hands over the notepad, presenting the hard data of their current abilities for review. She studies the paper, seeing her potential laid out in black and white for the first time. She is surprised to see a hidden skill listed that she didn't even know she possessed. It contradicts the standard medical exams she took years ago, which miss this detail entirely. He explains that while she has raw talent, he has to compensate for his weakness with expensive gear. The comparison reveals the awkward truth that his money-bought stats currently crush hers completely. She stares at him with a new look, realizing the weak manager is actually the team's heavy hitter. Keisuke muses that his merchant class is an anomaly, while Kaya diligently takes notes on his condition. She lies back, staring at her notebook as she contemplates the mechanics of point distribution. A sudden spark of inspiration lights up her eyes as a brilliant, albeit risky, idea forms. She leans in close, whispering a secret strategy to her manager that could change everything. With a playful wink and a point, she declares that she's found the perfect loophole to exploit. Meanwhile, in the city center, the massive screens that once broadcast their faces now show only shadows. Back at the agency, the bald director is losing his mind, slamming his fist on the desk in pure frustration. He screams that the Rider's popularity has tanked completely since the original duo left the building. He points a trembling finger at the replacement, blaming his incompetence for the sudden drop in metrics. The remaining team members sit on the couch, complaining that they haven't had any energy drinks or support all day. The replacement manager grinds his teeth, unable to control the talent that Keisuke handled so effortlessly. The director reminds him that he claimed managing the team would be a walk in the park without Kaya. Sweat pours down the replacement's face as he realizes the easy job was actually a logistical nightmare. Suddenly, the director's rant is cut short as he spots something impossible trending on social media. The replacement holds up his phone. assuming it's a terrestrial debut that could save their sinking ship. But as he looks at the screen, his optimism is instantly crushed by the image staring back at him. His glasses nearly slide off his nose as he processes the identity of the people breaking the internet. It's a live stream notification featuring none other than the fired manager and the rogue idol, looking happier than ever. To understand how they broke the internet, we have to rewind the clock slightly to the apartment planning session. The duo sits before the swirling vortex, discussing the mechanics of the awakening phenomenon. Usually, adventurers awaken their powers suddenly during combat, a random roll of the cosmic dice. She explains that normal people gain stat points automatically as they fight, without any control over the distribution. Keisuke realizes that his merchant interface allows him to see and manipulate these numbers manually. She points out that since he can see the stats, he might be able to distribute her points for her. He realizes that if she has unallocated experience points stored up, they can min-max her build instantly. She grabs his hand, confirming that some people accumulate experience without their stats automatically updating. She presses his hand against her heart, asking him to use his unique power to unlock her true potential. Our boy turns a deep shade of red, flustered by the sudden physical contact and the trust she's showing. She beams with confidence, believing that his management skills are the key to bypassing years of grinding. The deal is sealed over 2 simple cups of tea, marking the official formation of their new guild. The jagged crystals of the dungeon gleam in the darkness, setting the stage for their debut. Kaya marches forward with a spring in her step, thrilled that her manager's apartment connects to a world of adventure. Keisuke taps away on his smartphone, preparing the device that will serve as their window to the world. He holds the camera steady, announcing that they are starting a test recording for their upcoming stream. Kaya blinks in surprise, her attention snapping to the lens as the reality of the situation sets in. A professional smile instantly lights up her face, proving she's ready to perform for the invisible audience. As they venture deeper, she asks about the local wildlife, and he confirms that the first 5 floors are goblin territory. Right on cue, a shadow emerges from behind a pillar, blocking their path with malicious intent. The goblin grins, its crude weapon raised and its eyes locked on the intruders. The creature's gaze narrows, focusing intensely on Kaya, with a look that is anything but friendly. Kaya shudders, visibly repulsed by the monster's leering expression and gross demeanor. Keisuke keeps filming, dryly noting that goblins have a notorious preference for targeting young women. She crosses her arms with a huff, deciding that this particular fan doesn't deserve an autograph. With a burst of speed, she launches into action, her movements far sharper than the clumsy monster expected. The air around her freezes instantly, jagged shards of ice materializing from thin air. She dances through the air, casting a complex magic circle that unleashes a freezing barrage. A massive spike of ice impales the goblin, ending the fight before the creature can even swing its club. The monster shatters into particles of light, another victim of her flawless combat technique. She strikes a triumphant pose, while Keisuke praises her efficiency from behind the safety of the camera. But as he reviews the footage, his analytical eye catches a discrepancy in her combat data. His interface reveals that despite using a dagger, her actual skill proficiencies are in swordsmanship and marksmanship. He points to his digital inventory, realizing he needs to equip her with gear that actually matches her stats. A standard longsword materializes in the digital space, ready to be brought into reality. He hands the blade to her, explaining that this weapon will let her utilize her true potential. Kaya accepts the gift, her cheeks flushing as she realizes this is the same sword he was using earlier. She presses the handle against her face, happily inhaling the scent of her manager's hard work. Keisuke recoils in horror, asking if his sweat really smells that bad, completely missing the point. Trying to move past the awkwardness, he suggests she try dual-wielding since she has a gun skill too. He purchases a magical firearm from the shop, handing it over to complete her new loadout. She poses with both weapons, looking like a true action hero, while Keisuke nods in approval at the aesthetic upgrade. She secures the holster to her thigh, the final piece of her new combat ensemble. With a playful pose, she asks if this is the kind of lethal idol vibe he was going for. Keisuke is genuinely impressed, noting that she handles the weapons like extensions of her own body. She explains that her dagger training makes the transition to short swords and firearms feel surprisingly natural. But as she adjusts her gear, Keisuke's gaze drifts downward, his professionalism momentarily failing him. His face heats up as he realizes he's staring, his brain short-circuiting between manager and healthy male. Kaya catches him in the act and immediately capitalizes on it, lifting her hem with a mischievous tease. Keisuke nearly chokes on air, his face turning a shade of red that defies the laws of physics. She grins like a Cheshire cat, branding him a pervert while clearly enjoying the power trip. She asks if there are any other angles he needs to inspect for the sake of the stream. He stammers a weak defense, claiming that understanding audience demand is a crucial part of his job. She steps closer, adjusting his tie while lecturing him on the specific assets that male fans look for. She leans in until she fills his vision, asking if size is really the most important metric. He throws his hands up in surrender, begging her to stop before his heart explodes. Curious, she asks what parts of a man women are supposed to find attractive in return. She casually admits she spent all summer staring at his abs, dropping a bombshell that leaves him stunned. Now it's her turn to blush, covering her face as she confesses that she gets excited too. They continue deeper into the dungeon, the awkward romantic tension thick enough to cut with a knife. But they aren't the only ones watching, as a particularly nasty goblin grips its club in the shadows. The monster's eyes lock onto her legs, its gaze filled with a hunger that goes beyond just appetite. It scans her form with disgusting intent, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Drool drips from its jaws, the creature driven by base instincts that make it far creepier than the others. Kaya walks on, completely unaware that she has become the target of a predator. The goblin lunges from the darkness, grabbing her from behind in a vile embrace. Its claws dig into her, the sudden assault freezing her in place with sheer shock. She gasps, unable to break free as the monster's grip tightens around her. Tears form in her eyes as the creature's tongue drags across her face, a nightmare scenario unfolding. Keisuke's expression goes dark, the playful atmosphere vanishing instantly as a cold rage takes over. He moves faster than thought, his foot connecting with the goblin's face like a sledgehammer. He follows through with a devastating kick, launching the filth away from her with the force of a cannonball. Our boy roars with fury, warning the filth to keep its hands off his partner. Kaya freezes, stunned to see her mild-mannered manager suddenly radiating intense killing intent. The goblin reels back, clutching its face where a civilian shoe just made high-velocity contact. It screeches in agony, realizing too late that this prey fights back harder than expected. Keisuke stands his ground, his expression shifting from corporate polite to dungeon deadly. He plants his foot firmly, bracing himself as the dungeon decides to escalate the situation. A horde of goblins emerges from the shadows, surrounding the duo in a classic monster trap. Kaya panics, realizing they are outnumbered 10-1 by armed and angry locals. But Keisuke steps in front of her, his hand raised to signal that she should stay behind him. He declares that protecting her is his job, throwing a punch that hits with the force of a truck. Kaya watches with wide eyes, her heart skipping a beat at his unexpected gallantry. He shouts that he'll clean up this trash instantly, so they can get back to their filming schedule. Drawing his expensive blade, he unleashes a horizontal slash charged with his pay-to-win stats. The attack tears through the mob, sending goblins flying like bowling pins in a strike. In seconds, the room is silent, the horde reduced to fading particles and loot drops. He turns back with a refreshing smile, dusting off his suit as if he just finished a light jog. He checks on his star talent, asking if she's hurt, completely oblivious to her internal crisis. He apologizes for the delay, flashing a grin that is far too charming for a dungeon dive. Kaya kneels on the floor, her brain struggling to process the sheer coolness she just witnessed. She stares up at him, her face heating up as her admiration turns into something much more dangerous. Keisuke tilts his head, wondering why she's looking at him like he's a piece of prime steak. She blurts out a sudden proposal which he immediately reminds her is being broadcast live. He awkwardly pivots back to work, holding up the phone to start their equipment test. Kaya crouches down, trying to distract herself by brainstorming names for their new channel. She suggests a title that focuses entirely on her, trying to keep things professional. But they immediately start bickering like an old married couple about the branding strategy. She pauses, realizing that a solo title leaves out the man who just saved her life. Keisuke dismisses it, insisting that the manager is supposed to be invisible anyway. She looks up with a pout, arguing that if he can fight like that, he shouldn't be hiding. She insists that he needs to be part of the show, dragging him into the spotlight whether he likes it or not. Keisuke checks the stream settings, his hands trembling slightly as they prepare to go live. They clasp hands in a moment of shared resolve, cementing their partnership against the world. He offers a stiff wave to the camera, trying to mask his nerves with a reassuring smile. But internally, he's panicking that his presence as a male manager might alienate her fanatical fanbase. Kaya immediately senses his hesitation, her expression souring at his lack of confidence. They set up their makeshift studio in the hallway, right next to the swirling vortex of doom. The smartphone stands ready on its tripod, the humble lens that will capture their revolution. Kaya straightens her posture, switching instantly from playful partner to professional idol. She closes her eyes for a brief second, centering herself before the broadcast goes live. The stream begins, and she introduces herself with the poise of a veteran, reclaiming her identity. She drops the bombshell immediately, announcing her departure from the corrupt agency with a smile. Keisuke films from the sidelines as she declares her intention to continue diving as a freelancer. She gestures casually to the black mist behind her, introducing the dungeon in the hallway like it's a new piece of furniture. The chat starts to trickle in, viewers confused but intrigued by the bizarre setting and the new face. Across the city, random pedestrians stop in their tracks as the notification hits their feeds. The comment section accelerates, the algorithm picking up on the sudden influx of curiosity. Keisuke monitors the numbers, his heart pounding as the viewer count begins to climb. He grins with vindictive satisfaction, sending a silent challenge to the boss who fired him. Kaya beams at the lens, her charisma radiating through the screen and hooking the audience instantly. The broadcast ripples out from the humble apartment, reaching viewers far and wide. Keisuke steps into the frame, finally revealing the partner behind the operation to the public. She apologizes for the sudden news, playing the part of the humble idol to perfection. The chat explodes with shock, fans unable to believe their favorite star has gone rogue. Questions flood in, demanding to know why she left the safety of a major label. She deflects the drama with a playful gesture, keeping the mood light and mysterious. With a cheeky wink, she brushes off the corporate politics as just another twist of fate. Keisuke takes a critical hit from her cuteness, struggling to maintain his professional composure on camera. She announces her new career path, asking for support as she reinvents herself as a dungeon streamer. The camera captures every angle, broadcasting their declaration of independence to the world. They stand side by side, ready to prove that they don't need a massive agency to succeed. Keisuke films from a high angle as Kaya declares that she and her manager are a package deal, regardless of the agency's opinion. She bows deeply to the virtual audience, thanking them for sticking around despite the sudden career pivot. With a radiant smile, she promises to keep diving into dungeons, reassuring fans that the content they love isn't going anywhere. Keisuke monitors the feed as she explains her plan to juggle high school life with life-or-death combat. She drops the biggest bombshell of the night, casually mentioning that their new base of operations is literally inside the manager's apartment. The camera pans to the ominous black void swirling in the hallway, proving that she isn't joking about the location. Her cheeks flush pink as she describes the dangerous anomaly as a love nest, instantly derailing the professional vibe. Keisuke nearly drops the camera, his internal monologue screaming at her to stop fueling the shipping wars on a live broadcast. She explains that the city's official clearing schedule is backed up for months, leaving them no choice but to handle it themselves. With the exposition out of the way, she steps forward, crossing the threshold from the safety of the living room into the unknown. She leaps into the vortex with the energy of a rabbit, leaving the chat room stunned by the sudden transition. They materialize inside the crystal cavern, the camera adjusting to the dim light as the chat marvels at the seamless transition. She draws the high-grade blade he purchased, striking a pose that balances combat readiness with idle charm. Keisuke gives the all-clear signal, directing her toward the first mob of enemies waiting in the shadows. But the dungeon doesn't make them wait long, as a massive, jagged shadow looms over the pair. Keisuke dryly introduces the first guest of the stream, a goblin that looks less like a fan and more like a mugger. His eyes narrow behind the lens, his new analytical abilities instantly assessing the threat level of the creature. Kaya doesn't flinch, her expression shifting into a confident smile that tells the audience she's in complete control. She casually introduces the monster to the stream like it's a prop, noting that this particular dungeon is infested with them. Without wasting another second, she launches herself forward, blurring into motion to start the extermination. Her blade connects instantly, carving a line of impact across the monster's face before it can even raise its club. She uses the momentum to flip over the creature, turning the battle into a dazzling display of acrobatics. The goblin's expression twists in shock, realizing too late that this prey is significantly higher level than it is. Gravity takes over, slamming the defeated monster into the crystal floor with a satisfying thud. She lands gracefully and immediately targets the next enemy, moving with a fluidity that screams professional training. The second goblin freezes, its primitive brain finally registering the overwhelming danger approaching it. It becomes a massacre set to a rhythm, her blade weaving through the pack with lethal precision. Her eyes sharpen with focus, a battle cry escaping her lips as she pushes her new stats to the limit. The steel flashes and the monster's limb is separated from its body in a spray of dark ink. The creature howls in agony, hopping on one leg as the reality of the power gap sinks in. Kaya levels the magical firearm, her focus shifting from idol to executioner in a heartbeat. A single shot rings out, and the target is instantly converted into a loot drop on the cavern floor. She doesn't pause to celebrate, dodging a clumsy club swing while preparing her next move. It's a dazzling display of hybrid combat, mixing gunfire and swordplay in a way that looks straight out of an action movie. Keisuke captures every second, the chat scrolling rapidly with praise for her impossible accuracy. The goblin dissolves into smoke, leaving Kaya standing tall as the undisputed queen of the hallway dungeon. She breaks character for a moment to stick her tongue out, thanking the monster for its participation. Posing with her new toys, she credits her manager for the brilliant idea to equip her with a gun. Keisuke films with a proud smile, noting that the gun sword style is already a hit with the viewers. He glances at the counter, thrilled to see over 1,000 people watching their humble test run. But the dungeon isn't happy about being ignored, and a goblin decides to interrupt the broadcast. Keisuke senses the bloodlust behind him, realizing too late that the cameraman is not a neutral party. A crude club swings down, aiming to smash the device and the man holding it into pieces. Reacting on pure instinct, Keisuke delivers a high kick that defies his appearance as a salaryman. The goblin's face caves in under the force of his stat-boosted shoe, sending it flying across the room. The smartphone slips from his hand in the scuffle, landing face down on the rocky ground. Kaya stares in disbelief, stunned that her civilian manager just dismantled a monster with a single kick. He points to his accessories, explaining that he's just paying to win with high-level gear. Her awe turns to horror as she realizes he must have emptied his entire savings account to buy that power. He laughs nervously, dodging the financial question like it's a lethal attack. His mind races with the grim reality that he might have to pick up a part-time job to feed them. He considers the irony of clearing a dungeon by day and flipping burgers by night just to survive. Remembering the stream, he snatches the phone from the floor, realizing they've been broadcasting dead air. The chat is in chaos, wondering if the manager just got murdered live on camera. He quickly directs the lens back to his star, signaling that it's time to end the show before things get worse. Kaya nods, switching instantly from concerned partner back to cheerful idol. She waves to the camera, assuring the panicked fans that the accident was just a minor stumble. With a final heart pose, she promises a proper adventure next time, charming the audience one last time. The moment the stream cuts, she slumps with a pout, convinced that the broadcast was a disaster. Keisuke smiles, reassuring her that for a first attempt, they managed to capture something special. She immediately suggests another run for tomorrow, but Keisuke warns her that her commentary needs some work. He lectures her on the delicate art of hinting, trying to protect her idol image from a self-inflicted scandal. She cheekily counters that if hinting is dangerous, she should just state clearly that they are a couple. He raises a finger, explaining the golden rule of the industry: never let the fans see even the shadow of a boyfriend. He paints a terrifying picture of the fan base rioting and burning merchandise if they suspect she's taken. She pokes his chest, teasing that she just wants to avoid getting flamed for being too cute on camera. He checks the comments, sweating as he realizes she isn't listening to a single word of his professional advice. She giggles at the playback, completely ignoring the potential PR disaster she just caused with her flirting. Her eyes are glued to the screen, replaying the moment he saved her with a look of pure adoration. She demands he repeat his cool line, forcing him to relive his moment of accidental heroism. He awkwardly scratches his cheek, wondering if his attempt at being cool actually landed or just sounded cheesy. She reveals she recorded his voice clip for personal use, leaving him flustered by her obsession. She beams with a smile that could light up the dungeon, declaring this the highlight of her entire day. Seeing her genuine happiness, his lecture dies in his throat, replaced by a soft, defeated smile. He accepts that as long as she's happy, a little bit of chaos might be manageable for a manager of his caliber. They turn back toward the exit, the first successful dive of their independent career officially in the books. The scene shifts to the exterior of their humble headquarters, where the real administrative work begins. Back at the desk, Keisuke switches into editor mode while Kaya relaxes with some tea after the battle. He explains that he needs to edit the raw footage for the viewers who missed the live broadcast. He pulls up their channel page, already planning the thumbnails and titles to maximize their click-through rate. He outlines the path to monetization, his eyes focused on the subscriber count needed to pay the rent. Kaya glances over, realizing that every moment of their date is being packaged for public consumption. She cheerfully offers her entire earnings to him, treating her bank account like a shared family wallet. He panics, reminding her that embezzlement is a crime and her money is strictly hers to keep. She fiddles with her hair, shyly mumbling that married couples usually share their assets anyway. He freezes, his brain short-circuiting at the casual implication that they are already married. A mental battle ensues between his professional manager title and her delusional wife label. He shuts down the fantasy, declaring that he intends to earn his own keep as an adventurer while he still has funds. With a confident smile, he vows to get strong enough to protect her, without relying on her fame or money. The declaration hits her like a critical strike, leaving her speechless and blushing at his sudden resolve. She turns away with a pout, offering her personal savings if he ever finds himself short on cash. He sits back at his desk, firmly rejecting the offer and insisting that a manager pays for his own tools. Staring at the monitor, he finds himself captivated by the test footage they just recorded. Even through a digital screen, her natural charisma shines brighter than any scripted idol performance. The way she handles the gun with such genuine joy adds a layer of charm he hadn't expected. A thought slips past his professional filter, his cheeks coloring as he mutters exactly what he's thinking. He asks aloud if the current Kaya isn't just incredibly cute, catching her completely off guard. He looks at her with honest admiration, unaware of the nuclear bomb he just dropped on her heart. She covers her face, screaming internally as her brain melts from being praised so directly. He tries to clarify that he meant her marketability, but she's already fishing for a romantic confession. He declares with absolute certainty that she has the potential to surpass every other streamer in the industry. Her smile returns wider and brighter than before, fueled by his unwavering belief in her. Watching her, he realizes that this radiant expression is her true ultimate weapon. His mind drifts back to the past, remembering the serendipitous moment their paths first crossed. It wasn't in a dungeon or an office, but amidst the neon lights of a karaoke district. He recalls walking down the hallway, looking for a place to vent his corporate stress with a song. He stopped outside a door, drawn in by a voice that seemed too powerful for a cheap rental room. He reached for the handle, thinking it was his room, a simple mistake that would change his life. The door swung open, revealing not an empty room but a solo concert in full swing. Inside, a younger Kaya was singing her heart out, completely lost in the music. He stood frozen in the doorway, struck by the raw energy and joy radiating from her. She wasn't performing for an audience, just singing for the sheer love of it. It turned out she had entered his room by mistake, but she was too focused to even notice the intruder. He watched her smile as she sang, a look of pure, unadulterated happiness that captivated him instantly. His hand moved on its own, pulling out a business card before his brain could catch up. He scouted her right then and there, asking the stranger with the microphone to join his agency. But the industry is a cruel machine, and soon 2 other girls were added to form a marketable group. These new recruits were hungry for fame rather than the craft, shifting the group's dynamic instantly. A wall formed between the genuine artist and the fame chasers, leaving Kaya isolated in her own team. Back in the present, Keisuke types furiously, vowing to finally give that lonely girl the spotlight she truly deserves. With a final decisive keystroke, the editing process concludes, and their debut video is sent out into the digital ether. The thumbnail features Kaya in a bunny ear headband, a calculated choice to maximize the click-through rate. Keisuke pumps his fist in triumph, while Kaya thanks him for guiding her through their first independent production. She softens her expression, whispering that she should be the one thanking him for giving her this chance. Bowing deeply, she formally pledges to do her absolute best as the face of their new, 2-person agency. Her eyes burn with a new fire as she vows to become famous enough to make the people who mocked him regret everything. Keisuke is taken aback by her intensity, realizing that her drive isn't just for herself, but for his vindication too. He leans back with a relaxed smile, advising her not to carry that burden and to just enjoy the adventure for now. He reminds her that money and fame are secondary. His priority is ensuring she can do what she loves without the corporate chains. Internally, however, he admits that he does need to earn enough to keep himself alive and fed in the meantime. Getting back to logistics, he suggests she head home for the night so he can prepare to explain her resignation to her parents. His face falls as he realizes the sheer awkwardness of telling a set of parents that he convinced their daughter to quit her job. Kaya immediately misinterprets the parent meeting as a marriage proposal announcement, blushing furiously at her own delusion. He frantically corrects the misunderstanding while she pouts about being sent home instead of having a sleepover. Deciding to be a gentleman, he grabs his coat to walk her home, postponing the terrifying parent meeting for another day. They head out into the night, leaving the apartment and its interdimensional roommate behind for a few hours. Back on the server, the video sits at 0 views. a humble beginning for what is about to become a legend. But the algorithm wakes up, and the view count explodes from single digits to 10,000 in the blink of an eye. Walking down the quiet street, Kaya boldly asks for a spare key to his apartment so she can train whenever she wants. Keisuke considers the logic, realizing that giving her 24/7 access to the dungeon is actually a sound strategic move. He reaches into his pocket, deciding that trust is the most important asset in their partnership. He hands over the spare key, unaware that to her, this is basically the equivalent of an engagement ring. She cradles the small piece of metal like a holy relic, promising to treasure it with her life. Her happiness bubbles over into a radiant smile, thrilled to have a permanent connection to his home. They wave goodbye at the corner, their partnership stronger than ever as she heads home with a spring in her step. Returning to the empty apartment, Keisuke decides to burn off some energy by scouting the deeper floors alone. He navigates the wooden pathways of the dungeon, aiming to map out the route to the 10th floor for their next stream. But the dungeon has a welcoming committee ready, as a pack of goblins spots the intruder on their turf. He smiles nervously, realizing that solo scouting might have been a slightly reckless decision. But with his pay-to-win stats, he launches into the fray, turning the ambush into a one-sided beatdown. The battle ends with bodies hitting the floor, proving that his wallet is indeed mightier than the sword. He wipes the sweat from his brow, noting that the difficulty spike on the 7th floor is no joke. Taking a breather, he checks his phone. Grateful that modern dungeon crawling includes full 5G coverage. His eyes widen as a notification catches his attention, signaling unexpected activity on their brand new channel. He expects a handful of views, but the notification bell is ringing off the hook with hundreds of comments. The view count has already smashed past 5,000, a number that defies all logic for a day-old account. He pumps his fist, realizing that the writer's fanbase might have migrated faster than he dared to hope. He stares at the subscriber count, shocked that 3,000 people already signed up for Kaya and Manager's Dungeon Capture channel. The comments are a flood of support, with fans cheering for their idol's return and praising the stream quality. But his relief turns to panic as he spots a new video upload that he definitely didn't approve. The thumbnail features Kaya and a teddy bear, a rogue production that screams unsupervised content. His manager instincts scream red alert, knowing that unvetted videos are usually how scandals start. With a trembling finger, he hits play, praying that she hasn't accidentally destroyed her career. The video opens with Kaya in her room, greeting the audience with a smile that is dangerously disarming. She cheerfully recaps her resignation, framing the corporate drama as just various circumstances. Then she drops the bomb, introducing her partner not as a professional handler, but as the guy who quit with her. She leans in with a sympathetic look, describing him to the world as her unemployed virgin manager. She explains that she offered to support him financially since he's broke, but he stubbornly refused. Keisuke screams at his phone, offended that she felt the need to broadcast his celibacy to the entire internet. On screen, she continues her pitch, explaining that this channel is a joint operation between two partners. She holds up the bear, declaring that since they are equals, they will be splitting the profits 50-50. She celebrates her own genius, clearly proud of finding a way to force him to take her money. She bows politely, asking the fans to support their strange little two-person company. The video ends with a dazzling smile, the kind that makes viewers instantly forgive any awkward oversharing. Keisuke is left hyperventilating, terrified that mentioning a male partner will trigger a fan revolt. But the comments are surprisingly wholesome, with fans laughing at the unemployed virgin label instead of rioting. He grits his teeth as the chat turns him into a meme, realizing his dignity is the price of their success. Calming down, his thoughts drift to his former charges, wondering how the traitors are faring without him. He navigates to the industry bulletin boards, deciding to see if Karma has paid a visit to his old agency. The threads paint a grim picture, with fans tearing apart the remaining members for their disastrous, scriptless livestream. He scrolls through the comments, relieved to see the fans focusing on Kaya's upgraded visuals rather than his unemployment. But the unemployed virgin label is everywhere, a digital tattoo that makes his eye twitch every time he sees it. Fortunately, the overwhelming sentiment is positive, with fans noting that Kaya looks happier and more alive than she ever did at the agency. Keisuke smiles, realizing that as long as the audience supports her, he can handle being the butt of the joke. He thinks back to their filming session, grateful that she accepted him as a partner despite his lack of powers. He scratches his head, deciding that he needs to stop worrying about his image and focus on the work. The best way to silence the haters isn't with words, but with undeniable results in the dungeon. He clenches his fist, vowing to become strong enough to carry the burden of their dreams. Virginity jokes be damned. His resolve is interrupted by a sudden ringtone echoing through the crystal cavern, a sound that doesn't belong in a dungeon. He checks the screen and freezes, seeing the name Karen, one of the girls who chose the agency over them. His expression darkens as he remembers the two members who stayed behind, prioritizing corporate safety over loyalty. He stares at the phone, suspicious of why she would be calling him now after burning that bridge. Putting on his best professional voice, he answers the call, pretending nothing is wrong. He asks how she's doing, standing in the middle of a monster-infested dungeon. But Karen immediately mocks him, laughing about his 0 subscriber count and pathetic debut. Keisuke is confused, wondering why she's watching his content if she thinks he's such a loser. Laughter erupts from the other end, the sound of his former students enjoying his struggle. He listens silently, his manager instincts picking up on a strange presence on the line. His eyes widen as he realizes the girls aren't the only ones on the other end of this call. He cuts in, asking sharply if they are at work, knowing the boss must be supervising them. The laughter dies as a deeper, more hateful voice takes over the conversation. It's the bald director, Takano, complaining that Keisuke has been ignoring his calls. The villain sneers, lecturing him that talent is worthless without the connections only a big agency has. Keisuke listens to the arrogance, his expression unreadable as the boss lists all the reasons he will fail. Takano mocks the new channel, claiming that trying to monetize high schoolers without backing is a joke. Keisuke closes his eyes, realizing that he feels absolutely nothing for this man anymore. He tells himself to stay calm, refusing to let the insults drag him back into that toxic mindset. With a shout of defiance, he tells the boss he's done listening and prepares to end the call. On the other end, the boss ignores the girl's desperate pleas to ask Kaya to come back home. Keisuke hangs up the phone, severing the last tie to his past with a single tap. The trio of snakes erupts into laughter, finding endless amusement in their former manager's struggle against the corporate machine. Takano points a mocking finger at the phone, labeling our boy unemployed, while the girls giggle like schoolyard bullies. Keisuke decides he's heard enough trash for one lifetime and abruptly ends the call, cutting off their toxicity. He grips the phone until his knuckles turn white, refusing to let their poison seep into his mindset. Standing in the dungeon, he renews his vow to make Kaya a top-tier star, no matter what the haters say. With his resolve hardened, he descends deeper into the abyss, reaching the crystal-lined 8th floor. He steps onto the new level with a confident smile, ready to map out the dangers before bringing his partner here. But the welcome wagon arrives instantly as a high-speed projectile whizzes past his face. He barely dodges in time, watching a rock smash into the wall with the force of a cannonball. He snaps into a combat stance, scanning the shadows for the sniper who nearly took his head off. A squad of goblins emerges, armed with crude clubs and a limitless supply of ammunition. Keisuke sweats nervously, realizing that these aren't the mindless grunts from the upper floors. His analysis skill pings a level 12 goblin, revealing a nasty little ability called stone throwing. He ponders the skill name, wondering if it implies a magical enhancement rather than just a good arm. He calculates the odds, confident that his pay-to-win stats are still superior to their raw power. Trusting his gear, he charges forward to close the distance before they can reload. But another goblin steps up to the plate, winding up a pitch with malicious intent. The creature grins, its arm glowing slightly as it prepares to unleash a fastball. It hurls the stone with terrifying velocity, turning a simple rock into a lethal weapon. Keisuke is forced to dance, dodging a barrage of projectiles that shatter the ground around him. He weaves through the chaos, realizing that bringing Kaya here without scouting would have been a disaster. He inspects the impact crater, noting that the stone is embedded deep in the solid rock. A closer look reveals the projectile is infused with magic, making it far denser than normal stone. He grimaces, knowing that a single hit from one of these could end Kaya's career and her life. He deflects a shot with his blade, validating his decision to face this firing squad alone first. A goblin tries to stomp him while he's distracted, but he's too fast for cheap tricks. He counters with a swift kick, sending the ambusher flying back into its friends. The horde intensifies their assault, filling the air with a rain of magical rocks. Keisuke finds himself in the middle of a deadly pitching machine, surrounded on all sides. He shifts his grip on the sword, channeling his high school baseball days to turn this dungeon into a batting cage. He roars a challenge to the horde, deciding to return every single pitch right back to the sender. With perfect form, he connects with the magical stone, treating the lethal attack like a batting practice fastball. The return fire is devastating, the goblins' heads exploding as their own weapons turn against them in a triple strike. He takes a moment to catch his breath, acknowledging that the 8th floor requires a bit more caution than the rest. But the thrill of battle vanishes instantly as he remembers a real-world commitment he completely forgot. A glance at his phone triggers pure panic, revealing he has minutes to make it to the adventurer licensing exam. He abandons the dungeon run, sprinting back to civilization with his agility stat pushed to the absolute limit. He arrives at City Hall breathless and sweaty, staring up at the bureaucratic fortress he needs to conquer. Kaya is already there, puffing her cheeks in annoyance that her manager kept her waiting on such a big day. He bows in shame, offering a desperate apology while she stands there looking suspiciously like a supportive girlfriend. She points a finger with a grin, claiming that as his wife, it is her duty to oversee his important milestones. He brushes off the romantic hallucination, panicking that they are going to miss the check-in deadline. He rushes toward the reception, knowing that this qualification course is the key to legitimizing their work. He explains that the exam results will determine his official rank, a metric that dictates their future access. Stepping into the hall, he steels himself to perform, knowing this is the first step to making her a top-tier star.